As you know, we have a lot of online programs that are adaptive and respond to a student's responses. Those are great programs to use. But what if you wanted to create your own instructional activity with questions that you created, targeting a specific skill, and possibly have added your own distractors? Or say you want to build in student choice, and you want to use your own curated resources like videos and slideshows that you've created, or even text that you found that you really want to use. So to do something like this, you can use Google Forms. So before you jump into a new Google form, you want to understand the learning paths that a student will take as they progress through the form. So you saw earlier how to create sections in Google Forms. That's one really important key to creating an adaptive Google form. So we'll come back to this Google form in a minute. Let's first take a look at Google Drawings, where I created an adaptive learning pathway using Google Drawings to create a flowchart. You can use mind mapping programs like Lucidchart 2, or even just sketch this out on a whiteboard or piece of paper. Before we get started, if you like this Google Drawing template, feel free to use a copy of it found on the Google Drawing templates for Marlboro Township Schools or on our technology site under Google Resources. Use it to sketch out your first adaptive Google form. So let's take a look at my flowchart template that I outlined here. So in the key, I created a color code for the questions, answers, and learning paths. To start, remember most questions, or all questions, need to be multiple choice. Have the option to move them along to another section, so remember your DOK to keep your questions challenging. So on my form, I'm using page numbers, but those essentially equate to sections in Google Forms. Options 1 through 4 also indicate the multiple choice, option 1, 2, 3, or 4 respectively, and text that is in green would indicate the correct answer, and text that is in black indicates the incorrect answer. Let's have a look at the flowchart that's right here. So again, let's take a look at this flowchart in more detail. So first thing, I used red line to indicate the page that the student is brought to is for an incorrect answer. So maybe I will ask the question again in a different way, or present the content in another way. Maybe it's a math question. Perhaps it's a question that asks them to find another detail to support a main idea. To replace the red line, I'm using a purple line indicating that the student got the question incorrect, but they're moving on to an instructional content, a piece of instructional content, perhaps a video or a slideshow. And then a black arrow will indicate that the student is brought on to another question, maybe moving them along in the form and progress without seeing content again, or without ending the form completely for them. So our first form that we're looking at over here, this is our main idea passage. So if you recall from an earlier video, this question is a choice question. So the student has the opportunity to read a passage about sports, health, physical education, or a passage about healthy living and the environment. So here I've indicated the student will move on to section 2 to see the passage, and for this option the student goes all the way down to section 11 to view that passage. Moving along, here is section 2 with that passage. And there's actually a chart here that I just took a screenshot of that correlates to this passage. And so at the end of it, they'll just move on to the next section. Be aware of this as well, so we'll look at this in more detail, but I can indicate that I want them to go to the next question, but this question is actually, it's in order. So here's the first question, and so now I have all of the above is the correct answer. So what will happen is the student will go on to section 6, and in here these questions were incorrect and they go to section 4. So section 4 is right here, which is an instructional content video. So the student will click this video, a new tab will open, and then they'll be asked another question. So they'll be instructed to close the tab again and then come back here to the form and continue on. I did not really put any answers here. I just wanted to make a footnote. So this is my incorrect answer, and excuse me, the first one would be my correct answer, and the last two are my incorrect answers. So when I look at this question, what's happening is that the student will go on to the next section. So they'll see question 1 again, but I had to copy this question, just so you know, so it's right here, and I'm actually saying let's try this again, and it's a copy of the first question. You could certainly ask a different question, but I just figured let me just, for example's sake, let's just make this quick and simple. So if the student answers incorrectly on the second attempt at the first question, I'm having them submit their form. So let's take a look back at my flowchart. So here's what's happening. The student answers incorrectly and is brought down to this through this purple line, comes to this content, watches the question, watches the video, answers the question, and they answer incorrectly again. So now they're brought to this end of the form. Now I'm pulling this group of students for small group instruction. Perhaps they answered correctly here, and now they've answered incorrectly again on this question, second attempt. I end the form, and now they're brought to small group instruction. Perhaps they answered correctly, and now they're brought over here to the second question, question 2, asking them about the main idea. Let's come to the preview of the Google form. Select the passage, and now I'm going to read the passage, and I'm just going to click next. And I'm going to get the question incorrect. So now I'm brought to a video, and then I have to click the link, and now the video pops up. So the student will watch the video from, in this case, Learn Zillion, or whatever other resources that you have. And now I read the question, and I go ahead and I'll select the incorrect answer. I'll click next. And now it asks me to submit the form. So the student might have a question here, but you would basically say, yep, go ahead and submit the form, and then you bring that student back to work with you. So let's just hit the back button for a moment. And so if the student answered correctly, and so assuming the form is set up correctly, when I click the correct answer, I'll now be brought to seeing this question one more time. So if I answer incorrectly, the form should end. If I hit back, so at this point the student again might raise his hand and say I answered incorrectly, or they won't know, but it's saying submit. You would say yes, go ahead, submit, and pull that student for a small group. So if I click all of the above, the correct answer, now I'll be brought on to question 2. So essentially you can see how the form responses help the student go through a learning path that you have to carefully plan out.